is Wink Tracks the Tropics, powered by the Weather Authority.
When the tropics are active and timing is everything, the Weather Authority is keeping you prepared.
The latest update did come in from the National Hurricane Center. Helene moving north-northeast. Winds have increased up to 90 miles per hour.
Keeping you informed.
It's now 170 miles northwest of us, and as we had mentioned, this is a major Cat 4 hurricane. This is going to have major landfall implications.
Southwest Florida has seen its fair share of storms in the past few years.
We are leaving immediately after this because it is not safe. You're starting to see some of these debris, sticks flying up and out, and it's one of the reasons why Sanibel is evacuated. It clearly is not safe out here.
But our slice of paradise has bounced back in ways we'd never expected.
It's tough.
We had each other, and that's a good thing.
I wouldn't have made it without Marianne. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it.
Wink News has been there with you every step of the way. That won't change.
Yes, we avoid the worst part of the storm, but the wind field's growing and the pressures are deepening. We're going to feel more of that influence on the back end with the surge.
From forecast cones to safety tips, the Weather Authority team has you covered. You're watching Wink Tracks the Tropics.
All right, welcome in. Good morning and happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's edition of Wink Tracks the Tropics. I'm meteorologist Josh Green checking in here from the Wink News Weather Authority. What a beautiful day we have on Southwest Florida. Sunshine, blue skies. It's chilly out there. I couldn't ask for anything better. We're going to talk a little bit about that cold snap, some of the records we've broken over the past few days, also what we can expect looking ahead. And of course, we're going to talk about the tropics, right? Things are nice and quiet. We love that. But as advertised, we have a brand new long-range outlook that I'm really excited to show you from the Climate Prediction Center. It's all good things. We'll talk about what's on the National Hurricane Center's radar, and we'll talk a little bit about what we've seen so far this season and how it stacks up to some of the forecasts that were given by NOAA earlier on this year back in May. In addition to that, something you may have seen in our night skies last night, the aurora. Northern lights were visible all the way down in Florida. I've got some amazing pictures to share. I've also got an amazing panel to join me here today. We'll go ahead and bring them in. Look at us. There's a lot of us today. We have meteorologist Zach Malak, Lauren Kreidler, and Nikki Sheeks. How are we doing today, everyone?
Doing well.
Josh, doing good. Yes, I think we're loaded today.
We are.
Absolutely loaded.
It's a party.
It is a party. We have a lot to talk about
crowd.
as well.
Three's a party, four's a crowd today, that's for sure.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Not
Thank you for
today.
that clarification.
As more, the merrier. And guess what? It's not just us. It's our amazing viewers as well on YouTube, Facebook, whichever platform you are watching on. This is an interactive platform. We want to hear where you're watching from. Did you get to see some of those northern lights last night? And if you have any questions at any time, whatever we're talking about, go ahead and send them in. I've got my phone right here. I'll be able to see all of your comments coming in, and we'll be very happy to answer all of your questions. But without further ado, what do you say we go ahead and start with the tropics? Let's pop up that graphic right there. The countdown, yes, it is on. It continues. We are 18 days away from the official end of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. That comes at the end of this month on November 30th. Let's talk about what's out there right now. Absolutely nothing. You love that, right? National Hurricane Center says nothing is out there right now across the Gulf, Atlantic, or Caribbean. And in fact, nothing is new expected over the next 7 days. Now, remember the past few days, I've been teasing ahead, saying that the Climate Prediction Center releases an outlook every Tuesday afternoon, and that kind of shows us what to expect over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Now, look to the top left of your screen there. This extended outlook goes from November 19th all the way to December 2nd. So yes, this encompasses the end of hurricane season, and here is the best part. It looks like there's nothing on the screen. That is exactly right. The Climate Prediction Center is not expecting any tropical development in the Atlantic Basin, which includes the Atlantic, the Gulf, and the Caribbean over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that is boding very well for us here in Southwest Florida. The trends have absolutely been our friends over the past few days. I've shown you these ensemble models the past few days, and they just really haven't changed much, right? The European just does not want to show any development out there, tries to spin up a couple areas of low pressure in the southern Caribbean. Similar story with the GFS. Again, there's just nothing significant to note here. Those lines that you see further north, right, those are not tropical at all. Those are just normal areas of low pressure that we start to see, you know, as we kind of transition more so into the winter months rather than the summertime months. So the trends are our friends. The outlooks from the National Hurricane Center and the Climate Prediction Center are also our friends as well. So lots of things to, you know, look up to right now. This is just kind of a recap so far on the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, showing all of the different named storms that we've gotten to. The last one was Melissa, and we know that was the most impactful. It was the strongest hurricane, you know, based on pressure, tied to make landfall in the Atlantic Basin, one of the strongest ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin. But since then, we have not had any named storms. The next name on the list would be Nestor. Now, I want to go ahead and bring back in my panel to get their opinion on the matter. Guys, you know, what are we kind of looking at based on what you're seeing? What are the chances that we do see Nestor here, you know, let's say by November 30th?
I mean, we were just looking at some good news. We are seeing that good news across as we're not tracking anything and not expecting to either. So likelihood of seeing something develop is rather low at this time.
Yeah, I think we had a chance to that would have been, I guess, this week when we were looking at the Climate Prediction Center a few weeks back. We were tracking the tropics, and right now we aren't seeing anything at all. There is some moisture still near Central America, near and north of the Panama Canal, but beyond that, I do not see the odds of Nestor developing. I personally feel like the season has come to an end. Winter has arrived, if we can't tell from the 40s the past couple of days. It really feels like we have completely did the switch from hurricane season to winter, and obviously water temperatures have been plummeting. We were in the upper 70s, low 80s 2 weeks ago, mid 70s this past weekend. Now we're in the upper 60s for how cold it's been, where yes, these cold fronts are moving far south through the Florida Straits into the Caribbean, and those water temperatures are going to plummet also.
Nikki's on board. I know you are. Yeah, absolutely.
I love this. This is all just such good news. I mean, we had such an active season last year that I think many of us were like crossing our fingers, like, let this one be a quiet one. We need time to recover and not deal with any big problems this year. So I'm very thankful for it.
And it's nerve-wracking when we're in the months of September, October, even beginning of November, when you're still kind of on edge. Is there something that's going to develop? You know, the season's not over yet. You don't want to jinx it. But it's, you know, we're in this place now as we approach mid-November where you start feeling a little at ease, a lot at ease, really. I mean, as these cold fronts keep making their way through. So it is good news all the way around.
And I've got a good question for you guys. Our friend Casper is joining us this morning. He says good morning to you guys.
Hi, Casper.
You know, now that the season is likely over, what are your thoughts on how the new Google DeepMind model performed on its debut year?
I think it did really well. I think at first it wasn't as good, but I do think the model obviously is learning as it goes on.
Yeah.
The season it began a little bit on the weak side. There were things it was showing that was definitely out to lunch on for sure. But then when we were forecasting Imelda, as well as when we had Melissa and all those other systems, it really seemed like it was the model that was able to handle the forecast longer out in range. But Melissa the European also did have guidance on from the onset and the get-go as well. So I don't want to totally throw the models. We are continuing to watch to the side because some of them also performed very well this past season. GFS, I think, continued to be one that has struggled as it has in years past. But it's still one of those models that we still keep an eye on closely. But I would say the Google AI, it did a really good job, and I think it has all of our attention to be one that we should continue to add into our toolbox of models as we go into hurricanes of years in the future.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, I do agree with you there. I think it's done definitely good, especially the back half of the season. You know, I think at this point, it's a reliable model to, you know, take into consideration, right? The more we can take into consideration, the better, especially if it's proven to be pretty reliable. And I think it's done its job this year. So I think in the years coming up, it's definitely going to be another tool that not only we use here at the Weather Authority, but the National Hurricane Center. You know, in a lot of their discussions this year, they've referenced the Google AI.
They have.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that kind of goes to show that there's definitely a good amount of at least confidence and credence to it.
Yeah, I want to bring something up real quick. I saw this email coming together from our friends at the National Weather Service as well as AccuWeather, and they bring up the 5 critical factors that may have had a doing with the United States not seeing any landfalls this past year. One of them we've mentioned many times was the weaker Bermuda high being farther and farther to the east. Kind of a cool interaction there. The other one was a strong dips in the jet stream over the eastern half of the country. I felt like this entire hurricane season, we had many dips in the jet stream that really didn't correlate to strong storms for us. Usually when we have strong dips in the jet stream, we'll get a very heavy amount of rainfall that we'll see move across the entire southeast. Didn't really make its way down to Florida, but most of the entire southeast United States had a ton of rain this past summer. So that's kind of a one good connection there, as well as those fronts began to arrive in late September. Recall that. And then obviously the other biggest one is the presence of dry air, wind shear. We saw that through much of this season. That dry air lingered almost all season long across the Atlantic. And then that fifth one that they were talking about is actually that the Fujiwara effect, which brought in that the systems spinning around each other, Umberto, Imelda, and causing it to not be that big of a concern. So just kind of a cool little five analysis survey that I just saw get released within the past half an hour, kind of highlighting what we've talked about here throughout the past couple of months on Wink Tracks the Tropics.
That feels so long ago when we were talking about Umberto and Imelda and the Fujiwara. Yeah, that feels like a lifetime ago, but hey, we're getting there. We're almost done.
I feel like that last point is interesting as well, because that one is, specifically based on one storm that would have made landfall if it were not for Umberto. Right? Because Imelda, if you remember, all those forecast models and those tracks were showing, kind of headed off towards the Carolinas, northeast Georgia on the coastline there. And if it wasn't for the other storm, then it probably would have continued on that path. So a little interesting note there. One more thing I do want to bring up about the tropics before we transition a little bit is just comparing what we've seen so far based to the original forecast from NOAA earlier on this year, where they called for a 13 to 19 range for the number of named storms, on average 14. So we've got to 13 this year, pretty close to our average, but again, right below it. When you consider the past several years, it is definitely below that as well. Hurricanes, they called for 6 to 10 on average. We see around 7, and this year we saw 5. I think the big thing about this year was the fact, just the percentage of the hurricanes that became major hurricanes, right? Because you look at the forecast, they called for 3 to 5. We end up seeing 4. That's right in the middle there. But on average, we only see 3. So although this was a slightly less active than average season in terms of number of named storms, we actually had slightly, one more major hurricane based on what we typically see. And again, to me, it's the fact that, 4 out of the 5 hurricanes became major hurricanes, whereas on average, less than 50% of those become hurricanes. Do we want to talk a little bit, quickly just about why that is and why we think that is, that why most of those storms that became hurricanes were able to rapidly intensify into major hurricanes?
I just think because of the amount of wind shear that we had, dry air that we had across much of the basin this year, it kept most of those storms on the weaker side and into tropical storms. In the limited amount of opportunity that we had, basically that the presence of that didn't have the presence of some of those storms didn't have the wind shear or even the dry air. That's what really allowed it to become more explosive and develop. So I would say that presence or lack thereof of the dry air and the wind speeds with the shear is kind of that main correlating factor of what made some systems become hurricanes from tropical storms or not. And if they became hurricanes, that means the conditions were ripe and well for them to continue to strengthen. Kind of a last point, I'll let the other ladies, of course, weigh in on this as well, is that this is the first time in 10 years we did not have a landfalling hurricane in the United States. So just kind of a neat informational statement there that, we'll keep it going. That's some good news in a 10-year period where I felt like we were forecasting more and more storms, above average hurricane seasons, record amount of storms, 2020. I mean, it's been a decade of intense tropical following. So it's nice to have a stat like that at the end of this 10-year cycle of craziness is what I'm calling it in the tropics.
Well, I think one thing that I want to point out as well, this is something that I will talk about when I go out to communities for hurricane talks. You know, we all focus on the numbers so much, and you could see this wasn't, you know, our most active season, but we also had Melissa, which was a powerful record-breaking storm. And so you just have to remember it takes one storm to devastate an area, so you can't focus too much on these numbers because again, it just takes one of those storms to, you know, really change lives.
Yeah, and going on with that too, I mean, you're so right. I mean, we focus so much on those numbers, and you know, even seeing the headlines when we get those forecasts, they can be jarring. And of course, here at Wink News, we go the no hype route. We're not going to say what some of these headlines are saying. I mean, I saw some crazy ones like the worst hurricane season ahead for us, and you know, you really just have to know that all the ingredients have to be there, and then from there on out, there's so many different influences, like we saw with many different things between that dry air that Zach mentioned, the Fujiwara effect. There's just different things for each storm. Everyone's so different. So despite the number being forecast, it really just depends on each individual storm and the ingredients present when they develop.
When it came to the headlines, too, for this hurricane season, I mean, last year's hurricane season, 2024, those headlines were off the charts when it came to explosive, record-breaking, so on and so forth. And we did have a very impactful season last year, as we know, with the number of Gulf storms, as well as the impacts we had here in Southwest Florida. But this year, the headlines, I felt like were a little calmer. It felt like everyone knew that the year was going to be not as comparable to the year before. You know, I mentioned some of those hurricane talks early on that I said that the year would not have even close to what we saw last year. I knew that the Bermuda High was going to be a little bit farther east. I didn't know how weak it was going to be, but it's amazing how that did play a major role into the systems that developed across the Atlantic this year amongst the dry air and the wind shear as well.
And I think one thing to point out, since you were talking about the Bermuda High, for people to understand, basically these highs and low pressures help steer these storms. And so when that Bermuda High is weaker and further out into the Atlantic, that allows for those storms to turn out into the Central Atlantic rather than guiding them towards the United States. So when we have this stronger Bermuda High closer to the country, that's when we tend to see those storms head towards you know, the east coast of Florida, even into our way, or just along the southeast across the country.
Absolutely, and we have a few more of our viewers chiming in right now on YouTube. Deb and Brian both chiming in, saying good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Deb is also saying that this is my first year for hurricane season. She realizes every season is different.
Yes. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to hone in there, you know, by saying all these different impacts and, you know, again, those headlines saying above average hurricane season, which, you know, that's what the numbers predict, but it can be a little jarring when you see that. But you know, we almost made it through.
And Gregory is also chiming back in. He says one of the doctors, professors from Colorado State, mentioned how Hurricane Aaron helped to reinforce and maintain the East Coast troughing when they was doing a weekly presentation at the National Tropical Weather Conference.
Nice.
So it's interesting little tidbit there as well. Just how, you know, different storms, especially if they're larger, can sometimes have large-scale influences on the weather pattern.
You know, we had that, you know, when we first had that cool spell, I guess that was, what, 2 weeks ago now? 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, like
when Aaron was
Halloween-ish,
spinning up east of Florida. That was what we had years before that, and I can't recall the exact year. I think maybe, no, it won't come to mind, but when we had Sandy, when we had Hurricane Sandy riding up the East Coast, that was the last time that we had temperatures also that cold in the 40s for the first time of that season. But I think it was about 3 to 4 weeks ago now. And it was all thanks to another hurricane off Florida's East Coast that influenced the extreme troughing and the extreme cold air moving down the eastern half of the country. You know, there's been so much weather-wise going on between when the first arrival of cold air was and what's going on in the tropics, but there is directly that connection of the troughing influence on the western side of these systems as they're lifting off east of the United States, pulling that difference in pressure in. It's almost that positive feedback that we learn as meteorologists in school, where if you get that difference in pressure, the difference of lowering pressure, the wind funneling into those areas of low pressure, it almost continues to have an impact, even more so with going out from those storm systems. So kind of a neat connection there from what we had with Aaron and the impacts in the eastern half of the country with what we saw from Sandy and the eastern half of the country as well a number of years ago.
Very good. So I think that covers it all tropics-wise for today, but I'll tell you what, there are a lot of interesting things going on across Southwest Florida, right? Between the cold snap, record cold over the past couple of mornings, even yesterday afternoon, we shattered some records just because of how cool it stayed. But late last night, some of our residents were up late looking at the skies. All across the country they were as well. Yes, the northern lights were visible. Now, we have a lot of amazing pictures from our weather watchers, but before I show you those, I want you to get a little bit of a better understanding exactly what the northern lights are, how do they happen, how can we see them this far south? Luckily, Nikki Sheeks is here, and she's going to break it all down for you.
Well, they happen when we have these solar storms. Basically, it's when the sun emits these charged particles. And so around the Earth, we do have a magnetic field, and that typically protects us from these charged particles that are coming off of the sun. But that magnetic field is pretty weak near the poles. And so those charged particles are able to enter the Earth's atmosphere through those points. That's why you typically see the northern lights, closer to the poles, more so towards the north. And it's not very often that we do see it in Florida. So you have these charged particles entering into the atmosphere, and they begin to collide and interact with different gases in the atmosphere. So you begin to see these beautiful colors developing, but the colors actually depend on the height of these interactions and the different chemicals that it is dealing with, or the different compounds or molecular compounds they're dealing with. So red is typically seen when these collisions are happening high in the atmosphere. It's, the highest point, the colors that when we see the red, and that happens when those interactions happen with oxygen. Now, a little bit lower in the sky, that same interaction with oxygen will produce a green color. And then the closest to the surface and the interaction between nitrogen will produce those purples, pinks, and blues. But I saw some incredible photos of those bright shades of red. I mean, it was just so neat to see, but it is interesting to see how those colors are impacted again by the height and the different compounds that are being interacted with.
And speaking of beautiful colors, I mean, look at this, right? I mean, we've got a lot more pictures to show you, but the fact that we could see this in Bokeelia, this is down here in Southwest Florida on Pine Island. I mean, when you look at it with the naked eye sometimes, when these stronger solar storms happen down here in Southwest Florida, sometimes you can't see them actually with your eyes, but your camera actually does a really better job at kind of capturing those. Lauren, do you know more about that? Why do our cameras do a better job?
It kind of reminds me of like the moon. Remember a few weeks back when we had the full moon?
That's what made me think of it. I'm like, if anyone knows.
Yeah, when you turn down the exposure, it's easier to see those vivid colors. And that's the same thing with our moon. When you go take your phone up and you point it at the moon, it's just so bright and overwhelming looking that it's hard to make out the details. When you lower that exposure, when you see those details, that's when you get those beautiful colors that you could see. Our cameras are a little bit better at picking up that. And sometimes you don't see it to the naked eye, but if you point I remember actually, so I think it was last year, Nikki and I went out to, I don't even know where, middle of nowhere.
We were in the country, trying to get away from the light.
Trying to get away from the light because natural light impacts your viewing. So we tried getting to see, we didn't see any, did we?
You could see it when we did turn down the exposure, just the slightest bit of purple.
But you could not see it to the naked eye.
No,
so it was interesting that, we were just standing there pointing our phones up to the sky and adjusting that exposure, and then we were able to see a little bit of color there, but we went out there and I think we thought we were going to see exactly like that picture that you just showed, like to the naked eye. And some areas across the United States, they are very lucky. They get to look outside, they see that. Here we are so much further south that, not so much. But I mean, regardless, still beautiful. Even if your camera can capture this, look at that, Arcadia, Tyler. That's just picture perfect. Look at those stars. So pretty.
It's amazing because I feel like even last year with what Nikki and Lauren were mentioning that was also a G4 severe solar storm. And it's amazing to see how this is still a G4 severe solar storm and the massive amount of impact and difference across the entire country. I have an old chief meteorologist where I used to work at in Northwest Arkansas share videos of what you think would be like backpacking in Greenland or Iceland, and the shots are vivid, and yeah, you could see this in Port Charlotte from Taylor. The views were astounding last night, which goes into how many particles are truly being emitted by the sun to create all these reactions and collisions to get these colors to develop. I mean, it was an insane amount where I don't recall seeing this amount across the entire country. I saw a meteorologist state, and I quote, "It almost seemed like everyone on social media had one thing to talk about last night, and it was nothing bad at all.
I know,
it
I
was
love it.
literally just the northern lights across the United States and really across the entire country." So there's just a cool kind of statement there that this truly was the beauty of nature could truly calm the masses that usually sit on social media.
Too bad we were in bed at 6 p.m., Zach.
I was in bed at a lovely 4:30 p.m. after helping the St. Matthew's House golf outing on Monday, and I was so excited to miss this because I got some really good sleep.
But you have a chance of seeing it again tonight, hopefully.
And I will go back to bed again, too.
That was going to be my next one. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about, everyone, that missed it last night? What are their chances of seeing it again tonight? Because again, the chances of you seeing it with your naked eye last night, again, wasn't amazing, right? A lot of these pictures were taken a lot more rural locations, right? Bokeelia, there's not a whole lot of lights out there. Arcadia, obviously a little bit further north. So can you talk a little bit about what's the chances that we could see it down here in Southwest Florida?
I did a little research, and I'll let the girls speak on it as well. This morning, it seems like the G4 severe storm actually peaked around noon, is peaking right now. So what I was reading is that we could see a site very similar to what we saw last night. I'm going to let the others weigh in as well to see if that is confirmed on their side as well. That's kind of what I was looking into when I was doing some of that research. And a lot of people got caught off guard yesterday because at their first onset of this potential solar storm, it was not going to be as strong as it was when they kept updating us throughout the day yesterday. And it should be peaking today. So that's what I've been seeing. It seems like we should see views like this, if not even be a little bit better across some parts of the country tonight. And Lauren, Nikki, as well as Josh, weigh in as well and let us know, let me know if you saw anything different or even compared to that too.
No, I feel like that's what I saw as well.
I mean, if you're in the right location, dark skies, away from those city lights, it doesn't hurt to get outside and take some snaps and see if you see these beautiful scenes across Southwest Florida. And of course, send them our way. We would love to see them because, Zach, Josh, you guys are going to be sleeping. Lauren, you're an early bird as well.
I'll with them.
So maybe I'll go out there and see if I can see them.
Nikki's our only chance. She's our night owl.
And Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt, I feel like never sleeps. So he's always gathering your pictures that you send in and leaves them for us in the morning to help looking into as well. So it's a full team effort to track this stuff, even when some of us, me definitely, will be asleep.
And those clear skies help, of course, as well. We're not going to be seeing those low-level clouds or anything that would deter the view. So that is some good news.
We had another question coming in our comments about what's the best time to go out and see. Is there a specific time, or is it more so, once the sun has really set?
Zach, I feel like you said something in our morning meeting
I feel like it's when the sun is really set. I mean, some of those pictures that came in were around that 10 p.m. to midnight time frame. I had a picture from my brother-in-law. You could quickly show up as well that I think he was flying late last night. This is from, so that one's from my brother-in-law who's a pilot in the sky. So he captured that mid-flight yesterday. And so just a great capture there. But I think he had like a 10, 11 p.m. flight last night. Again, the higher you are in the sky, the better you might be able to see it earlier. But I think in that 9, 10, 11 midnight window could be pretty good. And the other picture was from my wife's aunts and uncle, Don and Deb in the Chicago suburbs. Just I like the contrast of the pinks amongst the very bright green grass of the lights of the farmland. So it's kind of a cool view there. But I think it's around that 9 to midnight time frame. Ladies, have you seen anything different? I think it does change sometimes too, depending on when the particles start to show up and collide as well.
I was going to say, if it's anything like last night, that definitely seems like the time frame. Beyond that, I mean, it is really dependent on what's going on in the sky. But between 9, I mean, after sunset, really. What time is the sunset now? It's like,
it's so
early.
6:41.
It's so early.
I feel like you have a better shot, again, probably after 8 p.m. From 8 to midnight, and maybe somewhere in the middle is your best shot, probably.
So Nikki's our only hope for the four of us.
Your only hope.
Come on, Nikki.
We'll be waiting tomorrow. If anyone, again, that is watching right now goes out tonight and is able to capture it with their camera, make sure you send it in to us, all right? Because we'll be featuring your pictures right here, same time, same place tomorrow. All right, guys, well, I'll tell you what, that is just about wrapping up our time here. Do we have any final thoughts? You know, we didn't really get to talk about the cold too much. I've got one graphic just to show real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of how cold it got this morning. We know how cold it was yesterday, and today, look at this. We actually broke another record low. Punta Gorda, 2 times in a row. The record was 44, got down to 39 this morning. In Fort Myers, it was 46, and in Naples, we got down to 50 degrees. And if you like the cold weather, you know, take it in while it lasts, because we do have a little bit of a warming trend settling in. Here it comes on your 7-day forecast. And again, it's not like it's going to get too warm out there, right? It's just not going to be cold anymore.
Perfect.
Quote unquote cold.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
I love it.
We call this Chamber of Commerce weather, right?
It's beautiful. Absolutely.
Goldilocks.
That's so nice. Goldilocks, yeah.
Perfect.
10 out
every
of
day.
10.
No one
Whatever you wanna
change
say.
anything.
Don't
no one
change.
work.
No, no. Take a day off. Treat yourself.
Well, I'll tell you what, tomorrow we're going to see if we were able to see a little bit more of those northern lights as well. And if we did, we'll be showing those pictures right here. We'll also talk a little bit more, again, just about the tropics, checking in what we're seeing. We'll look at the latest run and all the ensemble members. I have a little bit of a fun graphic to show tomorrow about December tropical systems. And that's kind of an interesting fact that ties in closer to home. And we'll talk a little bit about the weather-wise locally as we head into the weekend. But for now, I want you guys to have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place on Thursday.
Bye.
See you then.